Okay, so I had a couple friends ask me this week my advice on how to write a book, and I thought that would be a cute YouTube video idea. So here we are. The advice that I've been giving is the same advice I've been giving since I wrote my book, and that's because it's good advice. It really helped me, and it also gets me excited because I just get a little comforted by the idea of people wanting to actually write something of significance. The reason why is because most people aren't reading how they used to, and we don't we're reading less books than we pretty much ever have, at least for this age and this information age. And I just think that it's somewhat brave to want to write a book in this particular media climate where it's on the decline. What comforts me about it is it means you have something to say. People still have stuff to say. And one of the best ways to say something is with a book. Now, what's frustrating is, like what I mentioned, is that we're in this media climate that doesn't really appreciate books. And even if it's not even that they don't appreciate it. So many people wish they were reading more. People who used to read more aren't reading as much. And so it's not that the desire isn't there, it's that our nervous system has been exploited and we are having a hard time focusing because of that exploitation of our nervous system. And so if you're a millennial, you probably have experience in like basically having your nerves shot and not be able to focus on a book, and then having to reprogram your brain to know how to read that book or just focus through a book. And sometimes it takes proactive training. So, with that being said, you are entering a battlefield of many sorts, and you are going to want to just keep these things in mind. But yes, it's still brave, and I give you your props for wanting to do it. So, the first piece of advice I always tell people is to read Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott. The reason why is because the book was designed to get you to write your book, but it's not like a textbook style, it's like a storybook kind of style. And it just has a really effective way of putting your mind state in the frame of a writer. One of the main concepts of the book is shitty first drafts, where she basically explains how part of the writing process is just writing shitty first drafts. Most people, especially first time book writers and beginner writers, they think they're writing when they're actually editing. What does that mean? They type a few words and then right after they're backspacing and no, I gotta move this here, I gotta move that. That is not writing, that is editing. And it's very hard to get all your words out if you are picking at them as they're coming out. So you need to train yourself to just let them come out, even if they sound fucking awful, even if they sound horrendous, even if your words are just, I don't know what to say, I don't know what to say, I don't know what to say. You must unclog that part of your writer's muscle because what you have to say cannot really come out right now because of that. You have to train that out. So the book helps really drill that into your head and feel more comforted in your inability to write, because that's part of what's going on. Your inability to write is partly happening because you're editing, most likely. So when you have a shitty first draft, what the art of a shitty first draft really is, but people don't realize what writing is like radical self-compassion. You have to just see yourself. You got to see what comes out of your brain. It might be something you think is less, beneath you, or just stupid, or just doesn't sound what you think you want to, what you think you sound like in your head. But that's what writing is. You have to get good at streamlining that process and aligning your thoughts with your writing. And that's why journaling really helps. If you don't have a journaling practice, you want to start one because you got to hear yourself. Who are you? You got to hear yourself. What keeps coming up? What are the little things you like? What are the little things you hate? What keeps coming up? How do you talk? Who pisses you off? What do they have in common? You got to practice that. And so when you're journaling, what it's all about is being super intimate and just revealing your innermost thoughts to yourself. Now, you don't need to do that in your writing. I think the best writing does, but You just have to practice that muscle. So the first point of action is to read Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott and to start practicing your shitty first draft. Just practicing. So for me, I wrote 500 words a day when I was writing my book. And basically the practice of that is, can you first of all just write 500 words, even if they are, I hate this, I hate this, I hate this. And eventually you're gonna learn, you gotta see how your writer shows up on a daily basis. Is it mostly blocked, or are you having a decent time getting some stuff out pretty consistently? Because this is what's gonna happen pretty much regardless. You most likely have a period of time where you're blocked, but you still need to practice writing when you're blocked. Then you're gonna have a period of time when you're not blocked, but you're also not at your like highest, best level. Honestly, I think that's when you get the best stuff, because you can always go back and revise. And that's what Anne Lamott really also drills in your head in that book, is that it's okay to be an amazing reviser, but you cannot really revise if you're not getting the first shitty stuff out first. You know, editing is its own whole process. It's a whole separate phase. So if you can get enough of your mediocre stuff out, you can transform and elevate the mediocre to sound as, you know, poetic and impactful as you want it to sound. So if you have the practice of writing 500 words a day, then you are going to have your shitty block days, you're going to have your mediocre days, but those really add up in the long run. And once in a while, you might have one of those amazing unicorn days, or just amazing, like, you know, I'm in the zone days where everything's coming out, or a day where you're just writing a shit ton. Like you might get out 3,000 words in one day, 4,000 words in one day, but you would have never done that if you didn't force yourself to sit down and write at least 500. So that's the point. And even on days where you can't get all the way to 500, or you just like cheat to 500, say you realistically got like 200 words, it's still more words than you would have done if you didn't force yourself to write 500 words. You see? So it practices that muscle. Another story I share all the time when people ask me how I wrote my book is, I had a mentor at the time who had literally just published a book in Barnes & Noble. I saw it. It was real. It was like, wow, this person published a book. This is like early on in my career. It was super impressive. And so I would call him all the time and I would be like, yeah, like, I'm so excited for my book. It's going to have this. It's going to have that. And every time we spoke, I just had something to say about my book. Like, yeah, you know, I'm going to talk about that in my book and da-da-da. And then at some point, he was like, Alex, how many words have you written in this book? And he's like, until you have 40,000 words written down, you don't have a book. And it was the best statement he ever told me, because in my head, I thought I had a book. But books are not what's in your head. Books are the words, right? They're the accumulation of the words. And you can think you know what chapter 1 and chapter 2 is going to be, but until you really sit down and get those out, they're not really chapter 1 and chapter 2. So that was really helpful, because I didn't call him until I had those 40,000 words. I did not call him. I was like, okay, bet. Because I wanted to talk about my book. And I was like, all right, if I can only talk about it if it's written. And it was great advice. It was great advice. So that's my same advice to you. It's not a book unless you got at least 40,000 words written down. It's just not. You have to have those 40,000 words. It's just a concept until that point. And it's okay, but just know what you're dealing with. So that's a piece of advice I like to give. And yeah, so let's talk about this media climate a little bit. People are reading less, definitely less quantity. Like, we're reading memes. Does that count? Not really. Like, literacy has gone down, book reading has gone down. Now, again, I really think most people wish they were reading more. They just feel like they don't have the focus capacity to do that. And clearly, I have made a career out of showing that the reason that is because our nervous system has been exploited by these first and second generation social media apps. So what do we do now? Well, writing is still very powerful, and I think that you still can capture people through the power of voice. And Stephen King wrote about this. There's an anthology of him and some other writers. And again, I'm going to encourage you to read writers and just read in general. That's another thing. I had asked my friends, like, what are you reading? And they're like, I'm not reading. No, you got to read, babe. Reading and writing go hand in hand. And you better read some good shit, because whatever you're reading is going to influence how you're writing. I don't care. So that's another thing. If you're reading a lot of AI, if you're reading a lot of LinkedIn, you're going to sound like AI and LinkedIn, baby. And that's how a lot of you guys sound. So it's okay. You have a voice in there and it comes out. You just have not trained yourself to write them out. So what Stephen King basically says in this essay is what keeps a reader coming back is the voice. They need to hear your voice. It doesn't matter if you know everything, if you're a genius and you know all the data and the statistics. Do they want to hear your voice? Do you have a voice? Voice is opinionated and vulnerable. It is your human side. Again, I get very shocked and irritated that we don't have sensitivity to our humanity. I just don't understand that. Every day it boggles my brain, because I'm like, yeah, your most human part of you. That is what people want. That is what people need. That is what creates healthy life, is high quality connections, right? And part of how we can do that is through our human side and our voice. So you're going to want to cultivate that. You're going to want to cultivate your innermost voice, because especially now with AI, it should be easier. Just don't sound like AI. It should be easier now to capture people's attention through voice. It's still going to be hard because people's attention is shot, but whatever little chance you have will come through having a strong voice. You have to find your voice. And one thing I did when I was writing my book, and this was another piece of advice, is I took writing classes. I was in New York. I took writing classes, creative nonfiction, memoir classes, and they were very enriching. And here's why. Here's why I think you should take a writing class. One, it's going to help you practice forcing to write, because you have assignments, so you will have to write and you have to turn your assignments in. And that's the other really valuable part of writers groups, is you have to get critiqued. You have to get critiqued by the leader of the class, the teacher, as well as usually the other students. And just knowing other people are reading your stuff and have been assigned to read your stuff to see how good it is, just that, it sharpens you. Just that, it conditions your inner writer to handle critique and eyeballs, and because you need that. That's another thing when we're telling ourselves, oh, I'm writing a book. Yeah, it's all in the comfort of your own computer or notepad or whatever. It's all in the comfort of your eyes, and no one else knows what it is. It's good to start practicing letting people read. I wrote tons of shitty things on the internet, early on, but I knew I had to practice those shitty first drafts. I didn't care how bad it was. I just was like, I'm writing because I love to write and I have stuff to say, and eventually it'll start to sound better. And it did, I think. So that's just my opinion, and other people's opinion. I do recommend taking some writing classes, and you're also going to meet other writers. It's a good networking experience. You get a good social experience out of it. New York is funny, I had some Upper East Side rich moms in the group that you could tell were just kind of bored and taking writing classes. There were other actual aspiring authors. Most of the time the teachers are published authors themselves, so they can tell you about their experience. And I guess that's another thing I should talk about too, is publishing. So I am a self-published girl. I did not go the traditional publisher route because it's just so outdated, and I was just like, why would I do that if I can just write a book and upload it and get it edited and just upload it? And I considered it, and I talked to a few publishing houses, and I just felt like it was going to take too long, and the shit I talk about is very time sensitive. I'm like, I got to get it out now. And I just didn't want to wait for that process. And then what really confirmed it for me is I'm obviously a Anne Lamott stan. So when there was one time she spoke and I went to her event, and there was a Q&A, and I asked her, if you had to do it all over again, would you self-publish or go through a publisher? And this is a author who makes a living and has made a living from writing books her whole life. And she said she would self-publish. So that was my confirmation of okay, I'm going to self-publish. That was back in my days when I was really focused on being a writer. I am less like that. I got kind of spooked out of that because of my research that I did with Neil Postman. And to be honest, I kind of wish I didn't let it spook me too much, because even though people aren't reading as much, I still do love writing, and it's one of my favorite art forms, and I love it. But I just knew I couldn't write a book about people's attention span going down if no one was reading books. I'm like, the people reading books don't need this information. It's the people not reading books. And that's why I get inspired by different artists who learn how to get the message across in the medium the culture is speaking in that is advanced. And my favorite examples of that, which I brought up before, like cartoons like the Boondocks, where they said a lot without saying anything explicitly. It was through character and entertainment and dialogue that they held a mirror up to our culture and got their message across of like, hey, do you see this? Do you see yourself? So books are like bricks. They just, meaning that if the zeitgeist was, a shape where you had to throw something in there to get something through, it's a tiny little pin needle hole. And a book is like a fucking brick. It's not really gonna get in that bitch. At least that's how I feel. That doesn't mean you shouldn't write it. Other people will read it, and they will especially read it if you tap into your voice. And stop talking to us on top of yourself. Like, there's a way we talk to people that's like a mask of like what you really want to say. Just practice going, blah, blah, blah. What do I really want to say? Another great example of who does this is Eminem. Eminem is the type of artist where if he doesn't know what to say, he's going to say, I don't know what to say. And he's going to talk about why he feels like he doesn't know what to say. And you might end up hearing that he's frustrated about pressure from the label, or he feels like he's not going to be able to make another hit the way he did before. He will express his anxiety poetically and artistically, and that's the story. Has anxiety. That's the art. That's the content. That's the message of right now. Guess what? A lot of other people have anxiety. A lot of other people feel pressure and want to say fuck you to the world. And so those messages resonate because they are human and they are voice. So that's my advice on how to write a book. I did write a little list for you guys. Bird by bird, shitty first drafts, write, don't edit. Editing is a whole other process. You don't even have to edit. You could just get an editor. But obviously you have to really trust them. I mean, you're going to have to get an editor regardless, but I'm saying like the phase in which you send it to your editor is up to you, how vulnerable you want to be. Do you want to really get in there yourself, or you trust them to do it? Don't let ChatGPT do it. And then writing is a compassionate exercise. It's not what you think it's about. It's about being compassionate with whatever you have to say and letting yourself say it without editing yourself. 500 words a day, finding your voice, being sensitive to today's media climate, writing classes, and getting critiqued by your writing classes. Oh, and I also talked about publishing traditionally versus self-publishing. So hopefully these are helpful tips on how you can write a book. Let me know what you found to be the most valuable. Let me know what you're thinking about writing a book on. And yes, thank you for everyone who's read Resonate. I can't believe how much it's still read. I mean, I don't promote it pretty much at all, and people buy it all the time, and I get reviews on it all the time. So I'm very grateful for that. So thank you so much for tuning in.